Hello and welcome to today's episode of TSARP. I'm your host, Andrew Weir, and today our co-host is Sam.
Hello.
All right, today is a very special episode for two reasons. It's not just our 300th episode, but also we have a very special guest. He's the founder of Magic Loops. It's Adam Williams.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, so I've been looking through, I've known your journey for a while. I've been messing around with Magic Loops for a long time now. We featured it on the podcast before. But yeah, I'm glad we can finally have you on to hear all the stuff you've done. So do you kind of just want to start us off with what got you interested in coding and technology?
Wow, that's a great question. So way back when, let's see here. This is the early 2000s. All my friends had these really awesome gaming computers, and they could play all the newest, highest end games with good graphics and all this good stuff. My family had a pretty an okay machine. It was a Windows NT machine, but we did not have a good graphics card. A graphics card didn't work well with Windows NT. You really needed Windows 98 or XP to get the good stuff. And so the thing that I had going for me, though, was we had a broadband connection to the internet. So while all of my friends were on DSL and slow internet, I had a really speedy internet connection. So what do you do if you can't play games, but you have a computer that's connected to a fast internet? You start building websites. So that's where I got started. I got started first messing around with GeoCities and changing CSS and HTML and kind of building my own small websites. Then I got interested in Macromedia or Adobe Flash, creating little games and animations. Then I got into Java in high school, and then from there. I really expanded my breadth with C and Python and a variety of other languages as time went on. But yeah, it was really I started with the web.
Wow. So did any of your friends at that time have any interest in programming at all, or was it really just you?
They did. I guess they were more interested, I think, in figuring out how to hack the various games that they were playing. I think I never really got into RuneScape, but I remember a lot of folks using doing like hex editing of live memory with RuneScape and games like that. There was a bunch of client-side logic that you could manipulate. I got into that a little bit. I thought that was fun and interesting, but I'm not really someone that likes to, break the rules to get ahead in a game like that. So it was fun, but it was definitely the widespread ability of being able to share anything on the internet was far more fun to me than farming a few extra points in an online game.
Gotcha. Awesome. Yeah, nowadays there's a lot of places for communities of coders, especially young coders and programmers, to come together. We started TSARP for one of those places for a lot of young programmers to be able to listen in and hear interviews and get inspired too from great interviews, just like you. But where did your really professional career start too? When did you start coding for a job or anything like that?
It's a great question. So I took a few jobs in high school, doing website maintenance and building websites for a few small businesses in the Detroit area. So I guess that was my first professional experience. Let's see, maybe the more interesting question is, how did I move beyond websites to working on more lower level things? I guess I knew a lot about, kind of programming at a high level, which is probably, familiar with your audience here. You're building a website, you're using Replit, you're using the JVM, you're building something in Java for a class project, maybe you're in computer science AP. That's fantastic. But for me, there was always this kind of like inkling in the back of my head of like, okay, I understand the abstract like programming. What happens underneath that? Like, how do you go from, if statements and for loops and this sort of thing to like the actual, how do you connect that to the electricity that's coming out of the wall? And that was a big gap for me. I really wanted to know, like, how do you go from, AC power? I understood how AC power worked versus DC, it's just kind of alternating and whatnot.
Yeah.
How do you go from that to, and it turns out you then switch it to DC and then put a clock, blah, blah, blah. But anyways, how do you go from that to Facebook, this wide, worldwide, web service that anyone can access? And so I guess that was really the mystery that drove me to go from kind of high level kind of web programming to really explore the depths of what software could do.
That's awesome. I mean, I always had a very similar thing too. Like I wanted to really figure out how it worked, right? Cuz I mean, it's amazing that nowadays, like you were just saying, we can have power coming in from the wall, right? And it goes into this magical box and suddenly we can type, pretty basic words, into a program, and then all that stuff runs just from electricity coming in the wall. So we're very similar in that way. We both wanted to really figure that out. So then when did you start your first company, like on your own, like you were like the founder?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So the first quote unquote startup that I founded was actually a nonprofit in college. It was called Ask.us. And the idea with Ask Us was to essentially create this social network for politics. It was a failed endeavor ultimately, but I learned a lot along the way. I think the tech stack was Ruby on Rails. The front end was Backbone JS. I don't know if that's still a thing. And so we basically built a tool that enabled constituents, voters, to interface and ask questions of their elected officials. The idea being that you could kind of upvote questions like, when is this stop sign going to be implemented in my hometown? Kind of at the local level, all the way up to national level politics. Why are we funding this this initiative, or when are we going to fund this other thing? And so that was, I guess, my first foray into being a founder and kind of building a tool for others to use, kind of from the ground up.
Yeah, that idea actually sounds really good for, a company that didn't work out. Why do you think that it never ended up becoming a bigger thing and that it stopped?
I think there's a few things. I think Facebook and Twitter kind of dominated. I think a lot of people didn't want to move to yet another platform, and they just ended up sharing their political views on Facebook, and we saw how that progressed over time with state level actors and things coming in and manipulating elections and this sort of stuff. I don't know too much of the details there, but that's what's been alleged, at least. And so I think we saw a big push towards that. I think there's still space for this. Maybe one of the listeners will build this, because I still want it. Very selfishly, I want the ability to ask my elected officials questions in a very transparent way. We actually built the tool after meeting some folks that built basically what we wanted in Germany. In Germany, the politics are a lot less flashy and media and newsworthy and this sort of thing compared to the US. And but they built this system so that they could kind of keep track of their elected officials and figure out what's going on and this sort of thing. My favorite learning from speaking with those folks, and I'm struggling to remember the name of the site. It's a combination German word. I think it's like 20 letters long. If it comes to me, I'll share. But they actually used the site to discover that there was a politician who had held office in his local town, but had actually moved to Central America from Germany and had been living there for years. And nobody knew, because he kept getting elected into office. And this website helped them figure that out. So that was kind of our North Star. And to be quite frank, I'm sad it doesn't exist yet.
Yeah, gotcha. All right. Yeah, I think we all know when you go onto a social media platform like Twitter, now X, and Facebook, you might not be looking for political views all the time, but you definitely get them. But yeah, I got you there. All right. So then after that company didn't work out, what made you try to go again and with another company?
Yeah, so at that point, I actually had graduated college, and I moved out west. And I was interviewing at a few different places. I decided, right after college, I'd rather, get a full time job and before jumping into startups again. And I met the founder of one of the earliest web companies, a website called Weather Underground at my university. And I flew out to San Francisco actually for an Apple interview. And I stopped by the Weather Underground offices, and I went to I went in, and I didn't realize I was actually there for an interview. I thought I was just stopping by to say hi. They put me down with a few different engineers and the head of engineering. And the next thing I know, we're shipping code to production uh, during the interview. Um, I had noticed some ad that morning that was not great for a weather website, and the head of engineering said, "Oh my gosh, let's fix that." He ran out of the room during the interview, grabbed his laptop, came back. We changed the code during the interview and shipped it to production, and that that kind of lit a fire in my eyes, and I said, this is what I want to do. So when I did the Apple interview, I politely declined and joined Weather Underground and moved out to San Francisco.
That's awesome. And what did that company do?
So Weather Underground started as a telnet web service. This is pre World Wide Web. So telnet is a way to kind of ping computers, and so essentially you would ping the airport code. In the case of San Francisco, it'd be SFO. You ping this server and with telnet, and then it responds with the current weather data. So it started as like one of the first internet applications even before the World Wide Web. They quickly built a website and progressed. And by the time that I worked there, we were handling the weather data for all iPhone and Android phones in the US and many parts of the world. Yeah, it's started as a simple web service back in the day, and by the time I joined, we had been acquired by the Weather Channel, and I think now they're a part of IBM.
Gotcha. Awesome. All right. So then after that company, where did you really go from there?
It's a long journey. I don't know if we want to waste everyone's time here, but I jumped into a startup again. I built a dating app with some friends of mine. We had a little bit of money, we spent a little bit of time, and ultimately that company was acquired by a company called Life 360, which actually many of the listeners may be familiar with, back in 2015.
Gotcha. Yeah, I have Life 360. I use it a lot. That's awesome. All right. So then, yeah, let's jump a little bit ahead. What was the inspiration for Magic Loops, the current company that you co-founded and are running?
Great question. So we started building an AI assistant for individual contributors. This is a fancy way of saying, rather than building a god level AI for your whole company, let's build AI that helps individual, employees. And so we went in and we deployed our initial chat service to about 25 different organizations. We got into Y Combinator, and things were looking really good. And we, had hundreds of weekly active users. The stars were aligning. So we built this kind of like chat AI assistant thing, and the goal was to enable sales engineers to automate communication, to give CSMs, customer success managers, the tools to support the clients that they manage. Kind of use AI to automate the repetitive tasks within kind of boring computer work. things were looking really good. And we talked to a ton of users. And every user we talked to seemed to want to integrate with a different tool. The sales engineers wanted us to integrate with Gong. The marketers wanted us to integrate with HubSpot. The CSMs wanted us to integrate with a variety of tools like Slack. And so for each of these integrations, we started using large language models, or kind of quote unquote AI. We'll see how long it continues to be called AI, but these large language models to build these integrations for us. About halfway through the Y Combinator batch, we were summer of 2023, we realized that we had to flip the problem on its head to solve all of our customers' needs. And what I mean by that is that we had all of these different integrations. We were building the integrations using large language models. And if we instead said, hey, rather than shove each integration into this chat client, what if we instead enable the large language model to build and run integrations on its own behalf? What if we built kind of a computer, an operating system in some sense, but really a code running platform? What if we built this and then gave this as a tool to users with kind of LLM access? And that tool is ultimately what has become Magic Loops, kind of the fastest way to write and run code.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, the viewers should be familiar with it. I think we did a whole episode on it a few weeks ago, or I think now like a month and a half ago. But yeah, it's really awesome. I use it all the time. I used it to automate our Twitter posts for like when we, upload a YouTube video. We don't want to have to then go over to Twitter and then post it there and then go to Discord and post it there. So right now we have it doing the Twitter ones. We're trying to hook it up to Discord too. So yeah, I use it for stuff like that and even more. But yeah, I really love it. What was the user response to that new update having basically, the computer or, the website make the loops for you?
Yeah, it's a great question. There's a famous, I think folks are probably familiar with Hacker News. Personally, my favorite website actually, but started by Paul Graham, written by Paul Graham, one of the founders of Y Combinator. Hacker News is a famous website because a lot of companies will launch on there. And there was a specific launch way back in the day for a little known company at the time called Dropbox. And Drew Houston posted a comment on Hacker News, or posted a submission on Hacker News that said, hey, I'm building this thing that allows you to sync files between machines. What does everyone think? And the comments ripped him apart. They said, oh, this is so easy. You can just do this with SCP and do this like little shell command. And then all of a sudden you can have a file between computers. Why would you build a business if it just takes, 5 lines of code or whatever? And that's a pretty famous thing in the startup world, this story where everybody online said this is a terrible idea. And then Drew Houston went and made it a great idea. We launched Magic Loops on Hacker News. And we were expecting that same sort of everyone hates us kind of comments. And instead, we shot to the front page. We sat on the front page all day, and everyone said they loved it. Now, that sounds rosy, but I'm happy to dive into why maybe that's not the best thing for early stage companies.
Gotcha. And then after that initial response, right, all that positivity, did the users that came from that keep using it?
They did. We're growing slowly but surely. I think we have 25,000 loops created at this point, and there's let's see here. I'd say about 40% of what users want our tool to do, the tool can actually do, but they only actually succeed like 15% of the time. So we certainly have our work cut out for us.
Gotcha. Yeah. It's kind of goes into the new term that is, floating around, like prompt engineering, right? You can give it the initial prompt and it will try its best, and 15% of the time, like you're saying, like, it will work. And then after that, you gotta give it the right prompts to fix it up, maybe give it some more data, maybe API keys and stuff like that, and that's almost becoming a new job, in the all different fields, just prompt engineering. But yeah, it's just working with the AI, and then obviously on the development side for you guys, like, fixing it up so maybe it needs less of that. Yeah, and one day we got to see where the field goes with how much, human intervention there is. There's always going to be a little bit, but right now, it's a lot, and we'll see how that goes down over the next few months and years, and yeah.
Well, the funny thing, Andrew, is even if you had the best engineer in the world or a team of engineers at your disposal, the end user, in many cases, still doesn't or can't explain exactly what they want. I think the common phrasing for this is users will ask for a faster horse, but you really have to abstract the problem to see that maybe the car is the solution for the future. And our philosophy, at least, is that we want to make it as easy for users. And yes, you have to improve the prompt engineering and do this sort of things, but iteration is key. And in the ideal case, the user will specify exactly what they want, and the AI will build it in one shot. But what's more than likely to happen is the user will say, hey, this is what I want. The AI will build it. And then the user will say, oh, man, that isn't exactly what I wanted. Actually, instead of an email, I'd like to get this other trigger. Maybe it's a text message, or maybe I'd like, rather than pulling all the data from this site, maybe I want to pull it from multiple sites. And iteration, I think, is key to software development, AI enabled or not.
Yeah, I love that you said that, because a lot of people are like, prompt engineering, like, why is that going to be a job? Why is that in some places a job currently? Like, I can give it a prompt, I can tell it what I want, but a lot of people can't, like you were giving the faster horse example. They can say what they want, but they're not always saying it in the way that the AI is going to understand, but yeah, Sam, did you have a question?
I did. It's not really about much of prompt engineering, but how many people work for Magic Loops? Like,
It's a good
what's the
question.
team?
Yeah, it's quite small. There's less than 5 of us right now.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah. We have some contractors and some interns, and we're keeping it lean for the short term here.
You've achieved so much with that. Just that many people. That's really impressive.
Oh, thank you so much, Sam.
Yeah, and I think piggybacking on that, like, that's what's awesome about where we are in technology right now. Like, a small team like you guys can create an amazing product like Magic Loops, where even just a few years ago, it would be crazy to think, less than 5 people could create that, especially not in much time. So yeah, that's awesome. All right, so building on all of that, what is your favorite feature about Magic Loops currently?
What is my favorite feature about Magic Loops? That's a really good question. I'll answer that not with my favorite feature, but with my favorite loop. I think my favorite loop is quite simple, and all it does is it looks for the upcoming tides over the next week or so. Most people use tide tracking for surfing, but in my case, I like to take my dog to the beach. And this sounds pretty silly. It's not some big business use case or something like this, but it's just a personal automation that I think I've gotten the most value out of in my personal life. And so for me and my dog, we don't care about the waves and how good the waves are and this sort of thing like most of the tide trackers track for. We just go to the raw tide data and we look for specifically low tides. And so I set up a magic loop that looks for a set of conditions that are being met. Basically, is the tide less than a foot sometime between sunrise and sunset through the course of the year? And every week I get a message that says, here are the low tides for this week. And yeah, I think that's my most that's my favorite little silly loop.
Awesome. All right. And I think one question to kind of bring us to the end here is, has there been any surprises that Magic Loops has done, kind of like if a user created a loop you didn't even think was kind of possible at the time? Has anything like that happened?
Oh my gosh. Our intern, this wonderful guy by the name of China, uh, was messing around with magic loops, and he was connecting it to spreadsheets. And he's like, guys, I'm going to try something. We were hanging out in our office. And an hour later, less than an hour later, he showed us what he made. And he had implemented the game of battleships using entirely magic loops. And the way it worked is he connected it to 3 different spreadsheets. One spreadsheet was kind of the core game logic. This is, the data for where all the ships are. This is the source of truth. And then the 2 other spreadsheets, there was one for each player, and that showed that player's view of just their ships and allowed them to like move ships and make the views. And I think he only used 3 or 4 magic loops to make this happen. But he built the game of Battleship entirely using magic loops. And we don't have support for data. We don't have support for UI yet. Those are things that are on our roadmap and things that we're very excited about. But he said, you know what? I don't need that. I'm just going to use spreadsheets. And he built battleships, and that was probably the most impressive thing I've seen so far.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think that's one thing that is so amazing about AI is that, there's features sometimes or possibilities with it you don't even think are possible at the time or whatever, and then some person with a vision and, a lot of smarts can come along and make something happen that, you didn't even think was possible, which is awesome.
That just
oh, go ahead, Sam.
that just started a idea in my mind. Do you think it's possible to somehow run Doom using magic loops?
Like on a TI 84
Yeah,
calculator.
you can run it on everything.
You can run on
So-
everything, yeah.
You certainly can. I think you probably want to wait until we have some of the upcoming features planned to make it a bit more robust. But there's definitely a way that you could make Doom run. You'll probably need an external view of some sort to actually do the inputs and outputs in a way that's pleasant. But yeah, certainly that's a great idea, Sam. If you guys don't mind, Andrew, what is the biggest feature request that you have for us?
Oh, that's a good question. I would have to say, one thing, I don't even know exact feature how this would work out, but one thing I've noticed is like I've wanted to hook it up to some things directly without having to do it like through another webhook or something like YouTube, right? Like I want to be able to hook it up to YouTube just so one trigger could be like a YouTube video's posted, and then it continues on from there instead of having to set up another program to send a webhook. That's something like triggers from different sources like YouTube or different websites and stuff like that.
Oh, that's great feedback. Yeah, triggers are high on our priority list. A quick follow-on question there: would it help you to run magic loops locally for those use cases?
Oh, that's a great question. I think it would, because then I wouldn't have to like run the code on something like Replit. I could just run it on my computer and host it there. So probably, yeah.
And then you could just have a script that does it and calls the thing. Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Sam, what about you?
Here's the funny thing. I was thinking they pretty much the exact same thing as Andrew. I just yeah.
Yeah,
I
being
pretty much
able
use
to
it for
set
the
up
same thing as him.
custom
So-
triggers. Yeah,
Yeah.
cool.
All right.
Great.
Yeah, well, thank you for joining us today. You've shared a lot of great information, and your story is very inspiring. Thanks for coming on today, and thank you all to tuning in for our 300th episode. Thank you, and we'll see you, all of you, back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Bye everyone.
Thanks for having me.